Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Facebook Live on the last day of March 2021. It's the 31st of March. Good evening. Hope everyone is doing well. It almost is start of spring and enjoying the spring weather. I'm joined by some of the members of our panel. I have not checked my messages, so I don't know. I know Louise will not be able to make it. She has the kids to watch today, but she will be online. We're joined with our other panel members. April has come back. We missed you, April, last week. Thank you so much for joining us. April is a psychic and a spiritual teacher. Welcome, April. And then we have Travis, who is our musician and spiritual teacher. Welcome, Travis. And he's in a new spot, so we can see some more background. Thank you for more light. There's more light now, Travis. It's a lighter place where you are. Thank you. And of course, Kelly is with us, who is our Qigong teacher, one and only Qigong teacher. And we are joined by Eileen as well. She will come back on screen. She does an incredible job of keeping us streamlined. We are honored to have her always, consistently for more than a year, always here week after week. So grateful for it. Thank you, Eileen. So a couple of weeks back, April, you ended this session by saying you wanted to ask Kelly a question. I do have a couple of things that I want to talk about, but if you want to, since you're here and Kelly's here, did you want to start off with your question? And if Caesar and Ryan join, they can contribute as well.
We can do that, or we can answer, the audience's questions. My question was, I think it's I almost wrote Kelly on the side about it because I don't know how to describe my question. I know why we're here. I know why we come here. I know, so I don't know. I don't really know how to word my question at this point. Like, I know we come here for a reason. I know we come here to evolve, to learn. I know that we have a soul mission. I know that forgiveness and unconditional love is how we get off that karmic wheel. But I guess what I can't figure out is, or I haven't got the answer yet, is the real story to the Lucifer story and the real story to the Adam and Eve story. I think that's what I'm searching for, is the real story, because to me, it doesn't make sense. And I can't figure out for the life of me why I would want to leave ultimate bliss to come experience duality. I cannot figure out for the life of me why I would want to do that. I know that the universe and God is always expansive, continuously expansive. We never stop wanting to learn, expand, and grow. So I guess that's kind of the question. And instead of putting that out here and kind of mulling it over, I was going to write Kelly on the side, but I've been super swamped. I actually took a girls' vacation this last weekend for the first time in 21 years. So been really busy and more busy than, I actually did a lot of walking. I got 5 blisters on my feet from my vacation. So yeah. So anyways, that's kind of my question was, I think it's more metaphorical, philosophical is what I'm looking for. So I didn't know if you really want to address that or not.
So what is the Lucifer story? What is the context? Because I'm not Christian.
Yeah, the Christian Lucifer story is that Lucifer is actually a fallen angel from God who basically, just to shorten it up, make it real, he didn't want to follow God's rules. He wanted his own. So he's a fallen angel from God, which is why the whole, reason why we're here, we're cast into sin, we are less than perfect. He becomes the devil. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, what? Sorry, was that my loud voice?
Yeah.
He becomes the devil. Lucifer becomes the devil. Okay. And that's like the Old Testament. Is it part?
Well, it's not even in the, is it even in the Testament? It's not even in the Bible.
I don't remember my Bible well enough. The
It's not in the Bible. I don't believe.
if it is, it's in.
Well, part of it is, yeah.
And then what is the Adam and Eve portion of it that you had
Right.
a question about?
The Adam and Eve is that Eve was tricked to eat part of it, the apple of the tree of knowledge, and that is why women have labor and men have to work, and we're sinners. And yeah, I mean, I'm shortening up, like unbelievably shortening it up, but
That's
basically the bottom line is that we are not good enough because of this fallen angel who turns into the devil, who tempts us away from God. And we are all sinners, born of sin, born less than.
That's very Calvinist of you.
It's the gist of the story.
Yeah,
that's the gist of it.
The general gist of the story.
Yeah.
Where is the so you cannot kind of, you hear the story and you know of the soul perpetual.
Yeah.
So what happens is if you don't
cannot
then follow all these rules and you don't obey all these rules and repent and ask for forgiveness, then you go to hell with Lucifer, with the devil.
And you can reconcile this, which is the soul story, with this.
Now, what I can't reconcile is why I would want to leave ultimate bliss in the first place. Why I would be a light worker. So that's why I say I think it's much deeper. Why would I want to be this light worker and come here and
why would you experience separation?
Yeah, why?
Why would you
Okay. Do you see where I start to just like, why? Somebody please make sense of this.
Yep.
So yeah.
Oh, this is a favorite topic of mine, to be perfectly honest. So
of course, there.
So do you have any insights on it, April, yourself, or you want Kelly to speak?
My idea is that I found this to be true a long time ago. There's always some truth to every lie. Okay. So let's say that you call into work and you say, well, my grandma's sick, I can't come in. It's not your grandma that's sick, it's your neighbor's grandma, but there is a sick grandma. There is some truth to every lie. So I think there's something here to these stories. The first part of our Bible is much more metaphoric than people realize. It's not actually literal, it's metaphoric. But what I assume is that because God, universe, source, is ever expansive, curious, wants to learn, wants to grow. That's one of the keys to one of the answers, is that expansion. But to me, a lot of me says, well, why don't I just stay in bliss? Why don't I just stay happy? And then you have so many different variants of the story. Well, you came down here to help Earth because Earth's in trouble. Or you came down here to learn your soul lesson, which I do believe, and I think that is true. So I was looking towards, I don't know, a master to give me that. So I'm like, Kelly, clear this up for me. So that's where I'm kind of at.
I'll let Kelly speak, and then I'll speak about, once Travis is done, I'll say something about what the set books say and what Sadhguru also says about the whole thing. Thank you so much for the question. This time around, I didn't have to come up with the question, so I'm glad somebody else did. Go ahead, Kelly. You wanted to say something. Thank you. Thank you, April.
First of all, where to start? First of all, understanding the historical context of the creation of the Bible is really, really important. There are Bibles in Ethiopia that are older than the current King James Version that most people are familiar with, that has been popularized in the West. The version of the Bible that we know was created by Emperor Constantine when he brought all of the warring churches at the time together. and there were like 7 or 8 popes at the time, and he, in order to make his point, he beheaded one of the popes in front of the others to highlight how important it was for them to work together to create a Bible that would support his rule as a Christian emperor, even though he was a high priest of Mithras at the time. So understanding that the Bible has been used to promote both a very, very positive, loving message, but also a very specific political agenda. Imperialism takes many, many, many forms. The question of there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack here. So one of the things that a lot of people want to do is use the Old Testament, the first part of the Bible that we are familiar with, as an allegory and metaphor. And which is one way to look at it. Others want to have like a very literal thing to point at, to have some kind of concrete, linear understanding of time. And if we go by indigenous knowledge, human civilization is hundreds of thousands of years old and is a lot older than the current modernish creation of the interpreted message of the person that was given the title of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ being Jesus de Christo, which is Greek for the anointed light of Zeus. Right? So the translations, the original Bibles, when you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were written in Aramaic. So the original scrolls, the original books of the Bible were written in Aramaic, and they went through all of these translations and edits until they get to Emperor Constantine, who was dealing with the shrinking of the Holy Roman Empire, the incursions of the Muslims, and wanting to have something as a tool to be able to cement his rule and provide a doctrine through which to use as propaganda against the Muslim world. Before the Crusades ever happened. Very unfortunate this happened. Before this, there was a lot of openness about the message of Jesus Christ, Yeshua ben Miriam, if you want to go by the matriarchal lineage name that was more common at the time. There are archaeological finds that have pointed at Mary Magdalene actually being a high priestess of Artemis, and Jesus being a high priest of another sect, and them coming together and bringing together 2 narratives, which is why their union is so important, that they brought together 2 sacred narratives at the time from the Middle East. And archaeologists have actually discovered a church in the town of Magdala, where Mary of Magdala was from, that was founded with her and her partner, Jesus, and their inner circle. There's a mosaic on the floor. It's like beautiful ancient style mosaic. So now talk about Lucifer. One of his old names was Samael, and Samael means light bringer. So, and the whole concept of hell was sort of not really a thing until Dante's Inferno happened. You had talks, you had reincarnation and you had karma as part of the Christian doctrine. And you have papal bulls, which are basically the Pope issues these proclamations, kind of like a presidential edict, if you will, and commands that these edits be made and these new doctrines happen. And one of them was the erasing of karma and reincarnation as a doctrine of the Catholic Church, and the creation of this whole narrative about going to hell and the separation between heaven and hell and the war in heaven and et cetera, and man being caught in between, and sort of like man being the balance point between the two forces of good and evil. So the allegorical context or the metaphor, the symbolism of this narrative, this story, can be used as a symbolic representation of the constant internal conflict that humans have to go through. You know, good and evil, right? Fear, love, fear, love, fear, love. Now, April, you're a psychic medium, right? So having had conversations with those that are on the other side, or having witnessed other entities that are not so nice on the other side, you understand that there are dark energies out there, right? As with the dark, there is the light. That's the whole universal balance. Coming to Earth has everything to do with learning and growing and understanding our soul purpose. We all have different journeys. We all have different paths in this respect. You can go back to the Vedas and the sutras from the East, and you have similar stories. Now, some of the Asian stories, some of the East Indian, the Bhagavad Gita talks about the gods and the wars in heaven and the technology that they had. And here we have modern day, the last few years, we have this wonderful show, Ancient Aliens, and talking about, alien astronauts and stuff like that. And there's a lot of stuff that has been lost to history. And that's a whole other conversation in terms of the evolution of human civilization. But if anybody wants to, they should look up Credo Mutwa. Credo Mutwa was a Zulu shaman who wrote a book about ETs on the planet, basically giving a bare bones breakdown of the Zulu shamanistic tradition and histories that go back 35,000 years. Unbroken, right? So everything that I've talked, all the conversations that I've had with elders, First Nation elders on this subject here in Canada has basically been almost identical to the Credo Mutwa stuff that I've read, where they've always been here, other non-humanoid, non-human life forms have always been here, and they've always been visiting. And there are lots of stories of civilizations coming from the planets. And there's a lot of unexplained historical evidence and archaeological evidence. I'm not going to get into that. The whole question of why we would separate ourselves from creation. This is a thing that I, at one point in time wrestled with a fair bit. And of course, my guys were always like, "You're not listening. You're not listening." Part of it is being a presence on this planet and choosing love over fear is the whole point. You do not need to look. You do not need to look. I'm getting you do not need to look beyond that. It is really that simple, but it's also really that complex. This is one of the reasons why having a practice that helps you be present is so important, is so that you can learn to discern between the energies of love and fear. I myself have encountered beings from the other side when I used to channel and do mediumship that were rather scary. And, all those experiences were very educational in terms of how relevant and how valuable it is to be present and to be strong against the darkness by being present. And this is one of the reasons why I really appreciate someone like Eckhart Tolle distilling so much wisdom from both East and West into the works that he has, so that people have an ability to grasp the some of the finer points of this kind of a practice and why it's relevant. Why understanding the ego is so relevant. Because understanding the ego and holding your light against the darkness is what this is all about. This is my opinion. This is, does not matter what path, what faith, what part of society you are from. As far as I am concerned, everything is about holding your light against the darkness, no matter what is going on in the outside world. And that has everything to do with understanding how to be present and aware of your ego, because your ego is the language that the darkness likes to use the most to hijack you and keep you from aligning with your heart and being present and changing. A lot of people like to use or dismiss Lucifer as a metaphor, an allegory. But if you go back far enough in some of the Bibles, you can find images of Samael with his halo and everything. And it wasn't until about the 14th or 15th century that the church went into northern parts of Europe and they started demonizing the northern gods, the Norse gods, specifically Loki, who was always depicted with a horned helmet, the trickster, as being the representation of the darkness. So this is one of the main reasons why we have this whole horned devil depiction symbolically stamped in our psyche as being the, Satan or the god or of evil or whatever. So, but there are energies out there, there are entities out there that if you understand certain metaphysics, both in the West and the East, if you are dabbling in certain things, you can attract them to yourself. I actually really like watching ghost adventures and, shows about ghosts and paranormal activities, because it's always interesting to see how people interpret things and how information is also presented, because the Western world is a little fascinated with this and they don't really understand why. The whole question of like, why would we separate from source and pure bliss is sort of a little quixotic, there's two sides to this. First of all, you're not actually separate from, right? I know you get that. I know you get that. And second of all is the other part of that is to understand. Because the more that we understand, the more we reinforce and the stronger we make that connection conscious, the more light we bring into our present moment, the more light we bring into our lives and our interactions with everyone around us. And we do not have to say a thing. We do not have to proselytize. We do not have to advocate for anything or be an activist of any kind, because that energy, everything is vibration and frequency. Tesla had it right. Everything is vibration and frequency. This is the whole point of understanding how to be present, both mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, so that you can discern deeper and deeper and deeper levels of being present and anchoring light so that you can help your fellow humans on their own journey. I think I'll sort of press the pause button there, because I could keep going, because there's, I could go into Eastern and Western historical context of this whole narrative and First Nation parts of this whole narrative. And, so I'm just gonna, does that answer some of, yeah? Okay.
Thank
And
you, Kelly.
if there's anything you want to talk about, like on the side, just message me. I know you've been busy. I totally respect that and get that. But if there's, dialogue you want to have, let me know. And that goes for everybody, really. I mean,
Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yep.
Travis, did you want to say something about what April asked?
Sure. Just to refresh, I just want to try to come back to the essence of what you're asking, April. Do you mind just kind of putting it?
Well, it's basically it's the same question. If I was to shorten the question, it is, what are we doing here? What is the purpose of life? What am I? It's that old, but it's a little deeper than that. I'm just, and I realize that it's not the same as what it was years ago when I was per se legitly miserable in my life, where I was like, oh, what's the point of this? But there's still that kind of quest of, why would I leave God in the first place? Why would I leave all that is? Why would I leave unconditional? Why? And what kind of crazy person would I have to be to do that? Or crazy soul, right? So it's kind of that question is, what would ever, why would we leave source in the first place? Why would we ever do that? And that's kind of, yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, I think this is a very fun question to explore, so thank you. I think that without an attitude of lightness and playfulness, if we can't, and it, almost like a childlike kind of quality of wonder and fun, I don't believe that any of us will really come to know the depths inside of ourselves, where we'll really see the deeper answers to a question like that. Because if we take life, and this experiential reality so seriously, and we assign absolute importance to it, then we'll fail to see why. So if we answer the question why one would fragment your pure light, right? And that light, it comes through and it hits the prism of the mind and it fragments. And now you have fragmented light. And that's the rainbow of life. That's the spectrum of life. Why would you become a rainbow? Because it's fun to become a rainbow. Why would you get lost? So that you can find yourself. Why would you forget who you are? So that you could remember. And what happens is it kind of folds over on itself in this beautiful sort of mysterious and poetic way that the mind can't understand. It's paradoxical. It doesn't make sense. There's no, it might make sense in your gut. It might make sense in your heart, but it might make sense in your body, but it'll never make sense in your head. And so, but what I'm getting at is that the knowingness of who we are, of what we are, that all is what you're calling source. All is that. It's born of that. It's made of that. It returns to that. That source is all pervasive. There's nowhere that it isn't. And so the reason that we're cast out of the Garden of Eden when we eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is because we are now judging. We're dividing life, separating it, and judging and going, oh, this is good. This is good here. This is bad. And that's hell. It's a hellacious experience to have part of what is be as if it shouldn't be, as if it would be better if it were gone. It would be better if things weren't as they are. It would be better if things could be better than they are if only they were different. This is what happens when we separate and we see, here's me over there, there's that over there, and we're having an identity experience where there's some things, some stuff, something, anything that we're not, that we don't see ourselves in, and that breaks our hearts. It really breaks our hearts. And it's easier to admit the flip side of that, that when we can see ourselves in this and in that and in that and in that and in that, and that when we can see that there isn't any one aspect of what is that doesn't belong exactly where it is, when we can see that everything is exactly as it should be, and that it shouldn't be different than it is, and that if it were, it wouldn't be as good as it is right now. And when we can see that the future definitely could not be any more superior to what is right now, and we embrace the entirety, see, there's no more good and evil then, there's just the whole of what is. That's the return to heaven. And so so that's kind of some of the things that come to me around that is that when we can find that space inside of ourselves where we're not judging, because even to simply judge, we have to separate ourselves from something. And then we have to be in a superior seat to it to be able to judge it and deem it good or bad. Because otherwise we couldn't even see all of what it is. We would be inferior to it. It would be superior to us. Doesn't even make any sense. And so this is why the story, and I don't interpret these events, I don't know that they're historic or not, and that's not of my interest. My interest is there symbolic meaning in it that that can be made useful. So in the story of Lucifer, you can see right I don't even have to know much of the story to see, oh, yep, there it is. Because he says, I want something for me, man. I want to do my thing. Is kind of the vibe I get from that story. Hey, what about me? What about me? It's all about God. What about me? Well, that he's already, God doesn't have to do anything. He's done it all himself. He's made himself separate from God in a statement. In one way of seeing things, in one little twist of angle of perception, he's separated himself from that which is the support and essence of all that is. And so, and the thing is, and when we can find selflessness and go, you know what, I'm not going to worry about me so much right now. Instead of thinking and asking, what can I get out of life and what can I get out of this situation? What if I asked myself, what can I give to life? What can I give to this situation right now? What resources can I draw upon from within myself to contribute to this? Then we discover the inexhaustible source of all good inside of ourselves. And that is the beginning of our return to union with the divine. So it's just a funny thing that happens. I don't understand it in my mind. But there's something in my heart that knows what it feels like to come home. I know how that. I know it when I feel it, and that's the important part to me. Is when I feel that, I go, nothing else matters. I don't even need, it feels so good to be moving in that general direction. Don't even care if I'm there or not there. All I care is that my heart is true, and like an arrow, it's soaring, it toward the bullseye. And that is not living in sin, because that's where the term sin comes from. It's an archer's term for missing the bullseye. So just boom, you just gotta hit the bullseye, and it's all okay. And then we have so much to give, and that which we call God or source or whatever, it flows through us like a torrent. It can flow through us. So that's my relatively long answer. So thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Beautiful. Eileen, did you want to respond to April's question? Did you have anything from your atheist perspective with nor does Adam and Eve exist in your world, nor does Lucifer exist in your world? What do you say?
No, but I found that that's why I made a comment in the chat when my video was off, that I feel like this is a conversation that would actually help many people. Like, I think it's not so much that it's going to help them, but help them through hearing it discussed, because this is something I've heard from or seen from many people talking about that, exactly what April brought
April
up.
is asking.
And so I think it's actually a good conversation to have, even if it doesn't necessarily exactly align with what we've been discussing. But I don't have anything to add to it, but I definitely enjoyed listening to all that, especially a lot of the things that Travis said, like aren't necessarily things that I would have said because I wasn't knowledgeable to say it. But when he said it, I was like, yes, that. That's like, I really aligned with a lot of the things that you were saying at the beginning there, Travis. So thank you. I have a bunch of questions that are going to be brought over, so I don't really have anything to add.
Thank you, Eileen. So, April, you said your interpretation of the Adam and Eve. Seth actually has a very different interpretation of even who Jesus Christ is, right? But what he says, Adam and Eve, that story is about, and that's why the serpent is involved, because it is showing the birthing of the intuitive element. And I'll get the excerpt from Nature or Personal Reality, where he interprets what that Adam and Eve story is. So he says that signifies what I understood from his explanation was, it signifies the birthing of the intuitive element. And it's not so much as Eve was born out of the rib of Adam's body, right? It's more like Eve is the female, what is feminine yin energy? It is the intuitive element, right? Yin is associated with intuition. So he says that it is more of the intuitive birth of the intuitive element. So now when we say sin, which Travis explained very well, that sin is missing the mark, right? What mark are we missing? The mark that we are missing is our alignment with our inner beingness. That's the mark that we are missing. Moment to present moment to present moment, are we aligned? Are we aligned in the next moment? This now, like you say, now to the next now, to the next now, are we judging the other? Right? And one of the things that I did in my book was I wrote like a whole chart of when we are thinking my mother does not love me or my father doesn't love me, what is planetary intelligence or our inner being thinking of right in that moment? Your inner being is always loving your mother or loving your father, right? So that is the missing the mark. So I did like a huge table, like there are quite a few pages of those tables with each and every missing the mark, which is a limiting belief, right? You could convert it into a thought formation, which is missing the mark. Why do we take birth? Why do we separate? According to Seth, we separate because some when we do the life review, right? Some of the human beings, they say they don't want to learn in the other realm. They're learning in the other realm too, because their spirit guides and their guides in the other realm that have their own types of lessons. But there's no discerning mind, right? So those lessons are done at psychic level, telepathic level. Those lessons have to be presented in the other realm at the telepathic level. Here, what we do is we have a body and a brain, and then we process it. We use this like almost like a radio receiver, right? Calibrating it, calibrating it, calibrating it. And that all started with that Big Bang, the push, the inflation of the universe from the timeless realm. And somebody asked, I think George asked a question on Facebook when they said, I posted today, being is not only beyond, but also within. It's not so much as within. There is no beingness in exactly located, like where is it located? It's not in my body. When we say within, it actually means be so totally and utterly still, right? In that stillness, in that 0 point, you will connect with that timeless realm. It's in the timeless, whatever is expressing the consciousness that is expressing through us, the animating, what Eckhart says, the animating life force that is expressing through us is in the timeless realm. From the timeless realm, it is just coming through all these forms, whether it is this bottle of water, it's coming through into this bottle, each and every, and I think Kelly responded, each and every cell is imbued with that consciousness, with that timeless realm. Each and every cell, each and every atom of the bottle is imbued with that consciousness. Now, what are we going to do with that? Are we going to be aligned, or are we going to miss the mark? And that Lucifer story may just be that when we miss the mark, when we are not aligned, then what takes, the ego mind, instead of saying what Eckhart calls unconsciousness, they must have made a metaphorical story of a Lucifer and a Satan and all that. But what does Eckhart uses a much more kinder term, right? I feel unconsciousness, that human is unconscious. When that human is violently angry or violently beating up somebody, all he says is they're taken over by their pain body and they're unconscious, right? Very simple terms. They're not like, oh my God, it's a Satan and there's boiling water or cauldrons of whatever blood or whatever the picture is of Satan. It's not, it's just an unconscious. How much more kinder is that word, unconsciousness, overtaken by their pain body, right? Then saying Lucifer and, oh, there's this guy with horns and red or black, whatever. We kind of picture everything as black is bad, but Sadhguru actually says that the timeless realm is darkness, total darkness. So it's not enlightenment, it is actually darkenment. When we go into the timeless realm, it's like dark. It's completely dark, right? So that's why, like we have to kind of look at what may be dogmatic written and then like apply Eckhart's teachings to it and see what is the kinder way, because that is when we are aligned with our inner beingness. It's not we're going to judge it, right? What exactly is the pain body? Okay, let's go through the questions. There were quite a few questions, so I'll go back to Travis. And let's start at the top. So Saul Rios says, but what is love? And then another question is being present as much as we can, correct? Travis, what is love? Thank you.
Oh, I love these big, wide open questions. This is great.
I think the two questions go together. So what is love?
Okay.
And then they added being present as much as we can, correct?
Okay. Well, it's funny that thank you, because I was just going to say that for me to even be able to attempt to answer a question like that, I have to stop and look inside of myself, which is exactly what he just said. I think it's a he. And so, in a way, part of me is happier, perhaps stopping right there and going, yes, exactly. What is love? That's a question that I could enjoy asking until the end of time. I'm so happy asking that question. What is love? I don't need an answer. And I fear that if I were to find an answer, I might forget what love is. That's my answer.
If I would unmute myself. Thank you, Travis. April, did you want to answer this question? What is love?
Love is unconditional caring, kindness, genuineness. It contains lack of judgment. There is no judgment in love, true love. There's no judgment. It's free from good, bad, right, wrong, up, down. It's acceptance. It's total acceptance. And it's the second part as far as practicing being present as much as we can. Yes, that helps to give you that sense of love. It does help you to recenter yourself so that you don't have judgments. But love is void of all judgment, all not just judgment, but all the thinking mind that it comes attached with. Is this big? Is this small? Is this right? Is this wrong? Black, white. So mostly it is a no judgment. When I have love, it's also acceptance. I think that's a bigger part of it, is just accepting. Love and acceptance are, to me, very similar. I accept what is. I'm not upset with what is. I may not even be happy with what is. I just accept what is. It's not good or bad.
Thank you so much, April. Eileen, did you want to answer that question? What is love to you?
I liked how the person who questioned had added it's like being in true, like, present moment, because I feel like I talk a lot about unconditional love, and I feel like if you have that and you are in that, like, you are fully accepting the present moment. Like, that's the only time you're going to experience, I think, that. I'm not going to add too much onto that. I'm still kind of working. And there's also more questions to bring over to you guys. So
thank you, Eileen. I think Eckhart says love is to recognize myself in the other, right? When that presence, so being present as much as we can, in that presence, we know of ourselves. And when I say inner, when we are connected to source, the timeless realm, we know that through that connection I'm experiencing that connection with the other. And I actually experience it a lot. one of the things that I wanted to bring up at the beginning of this, like it has a sense of boundarylessness. One of the things I wanted to bring up, like in the very beginning of this Facebook Live Q&A, is it's something that I've done for the past 5 years for the Facebook group, right? We've said peace, harmony, and abundance for all. I've noticed that the way I intend, right? So I've been doing this very anonymously. Like if somebody wants Eckhart's books, I'll just buy it for them. I'll get their address, no matter where they are in the park, on this planet, right? I'll buy Eckhart's books, send it to them. I'll buy Sacred Acoustics music and send it to them, like, or give them a gift card. Give people like Blood, people remember Blood, right? Like I'll buy them membership to Eckhart's. Eckhart used to have a way to buy membership, like one thing of like a $20 membership, right? It's so simple. And I've noticed Louise does the same thing. And now I've noticed that Gracie has been doing the same thing. Like when School of Awakening started, she started coordinating with everybody. She told me, oh, Travis is joining and I'm trying to get Melba to join. That is love. How can you start contacting everybody and say, you know, that takes effort. People need to think. It takes effort to actually be connected to so many people that are somewhere on the planet. They're not your family member, they're not your friend, they're not your relative, right? It's somebody on the planet, but you feel a deep bond towards them. And out of that deep bond, you're going to say, hey, let me share the Sacred Acoustics meditation with you. Or let me share this Eckhart video with you. Or let me share this book. Let me buy. Louise took my book and her book and sent it to somebody. How amazing. I mean, she almost acts as though my book is her book. She's promoting my book more than I think of promoting my book, right? Look at the selflessness. Look at that love. I mean, it is incredible. Like some days, like I'm just floating on clouds, just thinking of how Gracie and Louise have embraced that's how I've been for the past 5 years. Nobody knows that there's been stuff that happens in the, like, you know, just asking for something. If somebody mentions it, I'll message them privately and I'll say, hey, do you want the book? If you want the book, I'll just send it to you. Give me your physical address and I'll mail it to you. So try and do that, right? Like connect. That's what the community is. That is what the bond is, right? Help each other out. Help each other grow. We are born, that's what Abraham Hicks uses the word. We are born uplifters, right? Already the panel members, the core group of meditators, they do that. They uplift each other, right? So uplift each other, do something for another. That is love. That is true love. This whole fantasy of having a partner and all that, that's one kind of love. But this loving kindness and compassion is truly, truly what we are here for. The unconditionality of it, that you're not asking anything in Gracie's not asking anything in return, and Louisa's not asking anything in return. She's just doing it. It's like a spontaneous, okay, something happened, and okay, I'll do this for you kind of thing. So Kelly, go ahead. You wanted to say something on what is love? And there are quite a few questions, so we can move to the other questions as well.
I will do my best to be brief.
Thank you.
What is love? Love is not a romantic conditioned notion of attachment. When you actually understand being present and understand how to feel the eternal and the cosmic ocean, you realize that anything that has to do with attachment of any kind is not love. Yes, there's connection. There is loving kindness and there's compassion and there's support of others whose presence you appreciate. Absolutely. Love is beyond bliss and gratitude. Those are aspects of love. Compassion is an aspect of love. Supporting others and doing friendly things is an expression of understanding love. I do agree that one of the primary ways that a person can experience love is through working at seeing themselves in another person and what they would do in that person's shoes. My 2 cents. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Kelly. Actually, if you want to take the next question, when in the present, how do you manage memories? When in the present, Wendy asks, when in the present, how do you manage memories?
Okay. Memories are information. When you're present, you observe everything, even memories. The past, your past, is information for you, is about context for your learning experience and why you are here and what your actual language for connecting with yourself really is. Memories are there to help us understand those experiences that have formed who we are, why we've actually made the choices that we have, and how those choices reflect our current present moment.
Thank you, Kelly. April, did you want to answer this? When in the present, how do you manage memories?
Well, from the spiritual perspective, the first thing that we would say is that if you're having memories, you're not in the present moment, right? That would be the first thing to say. Being in the actual present moment is right now. It is not in the past where the memories are. But if the mind has wandered and a memory has strolled in, because we store our memories, I see the brain almost like a file cabinet, and we store them due to association. So something triggers something. A red square triggers memory from 7th grade, and a circle triggers something when you were 20. So it's like a file cabinet. The brain just goes, where's that memory at? And it pulls the memory. The subconscious mind stores things in, except for, well, there's a few people. Eileen's one of them. Most people, they're stored in pictures, not words. Most people, but Eileen has said that up until recently, she didn't have pictures. She just had words. But most memories are stored with the picture, and with the picture and the memory comes the emotion. They all get stored together, like in this lump. So if you have a memory that comes up, just to answer this kind of quickly, the first thing that I ask people to do that I work with is to notice, become aware that you're doing that you're in the past. You can either stop that train of thought. The other thing is if you have a memory and it's not happy, it's not good, it's not pleasant, is the word I'm looking for. It's important to realize, to say, this isn't something you're currently experiencing at this moment. Remembering is not currently experiencing. It can feel that way, but you're not actually currently experiencing it in this moment. And the key is either to stop the thought by having awareness that that's what you're doing, or to change the thought into something else. For presence, you would go back into, I actually go back into like almost like a blank slate. It's almost like I envision like a skyline where there's nothing there. It's just like this blissful, beautiful skyline. There's no words, there's no pictures. So you go back to whatever you're using as your tool for that present moment.
So when she asked the question, when in the present, how do you manage memories? You think she meant painful memories?
Perhaps, because the human brain is created as a organ for survival. It's also processing, but we are programmed to survive. So the brain doesn't normally remember rainbows, just doesn't do that. We don't remember our rainbows and lollipops. Normally, if we have a memory, it's a negative one. Once in a while, it'll be a funny one, depending on where you're at or who you're with. But the brain doesn't normally, especially when we're by ourselves and the brain is allowed to just roam free. Yeah, it doesn't normally pick up the happy memories. So I would say no.
Thank you, April.
Um,
Travis, did you want to answer the question, when in the present, how do you manage memories? I think
Sure.
April did a good job.
Yeah, I like these answers. It's really rich today. These questions are really fun and rich. So, I guess what comes up for me is that what makes memories problematic? When do memories become a problem at all? How like why would we want or need to manage them? And so what I think is going on there is that we have a couple of identities. We have more than one identity, or another way to put that would be that our sense of self, our sense of identity of who we are, is sometimes kind of moving around trying to figure out exactly where home is. And so it's going, who am I? Who am I? Where do I belong? And so when memories can become problematic is because they're instilled with a sense of identity. There's a sense of who I am in relation to a past event that has come and passed. And so if we're noticing that quality of, oh, look at that, there's a little bit of that sense of I, that sense of me, that sense of myself, all kind of mixed up, all kind of tangled up or mixed up in that memory. And it tells me something about who I am to myself. That's when memories need management. Now these memories need managing, because the memories are dictating to me who I am. And so, but what happens is when we see that bit of identity mixed in with the memory, that's the beginning of seeing who is seeing that. That is, it's the witnessing identity, which is now we're moving closer to not a limited sense of who I am and being identified with something, an event in time, anything. Now we're moving closer to a sense of identity that isn't identified with anything. It's almost like an identity-less identity. It's unencumbered. When an identity isn't identified with anything, then there's no problem. It's only when we're identified with anything, an event, a person, a place, and anything, any thing that springs forth into being. If our identity becomes mixed up in anything that springs forth into being, now my memories need managing again, because now I'm tangled, I'm encumbered, I'm bogged down, it's problematic. Now I'm experiencing a problematic self instead of a free, unencumbered, unbound self, boundless self. And so all that's required to manage memories is to start to look at the self quality, the who am I quality, the quality of identity of who I am. And if I can see it there, if I'm seeing it there, I'm already removed from it a little bit. So if I'm seeing that quality of being identified with the memory, I'm already moving in the right direction, further and further closer to that identity-less identity, or that selfless self, that beingness that isn't being this or being that. So to me, that's how to manage them, is just to look and go, where am I in that? Because there's nothing wrong with, you could look at them. It's nice to run through the files, run through the photo album, and oh, that's nice. Put it down. It's not a problem. It's only a problem when who I am gets all tangled up in it. So that's what I've got for that one.
Amazing insight, Travis. when I get identified with that memory, then I become that narrative, that story of the physical abuse or whatever abuse or whatever the painful memory is, right?
Or the rainbow. Even.
Or the rainbow as well.
Because
Yes.
now I'm the lollipop guy or whatever it might be. It's don't need to
Yes.
be that guy. So or gal.
The other thing while when you said manage so many times when you were speaking, I kind of felt like it was almost like the beach ball effect, like you're trying to manage so many beach balls under the water, right? That's in that the shadow effect movie. And then even Eckhart talked about like pressure cooker. It becomes like a pressure cooker, right? Like you're managing to manage all these feelings and let me manage this feeling, and then it'll burst. One day you'll have a pain body attack and boom, it'll all come just like the pressure cooker. If it gets too much steam, it's just going to burst, right? The lid will fall. In India, it happens all the time. The lid like explodes and it hits the ceiling and it comes down. That's what happens to pressure cookers. So thank you. Thank you for that picture in my mind when you said manage. Eileen, do you want to talk about when in the present, how do you manage memories?
I guess I think of them as kind of like it's part of my present moment. If something's coming up, but then adding that into the rest of my present moment, that would be just fully accepting and being grateful for. And then I appreciated April bringing up that there are people out there like me who don't see pictures, and so my memories do literally come in as like thoughts, like words and feelings. And so I know I'm not the only one, but even those, like they come in, and I just now I'm able to do that, just being grateful for them, that they come in and I experienced that in that present moment, and grateful for all of them. That's really it.
Thank you, Eileen. Allison asks the next question. When one harms another psychologically or physically, we are not to judge but discern. There are people who are not conscious and can hurt.
I believe that she was trying to add on to her question. Not fully necessarily answering, but possibly trying to answer it for herself.
For herself. So when one harms another psychologically or physically, we are not to judge but discern. There are people who are not conscious and can hurt.
And then if I remember correctly, she added on a child, it's further down. The child who is abused is not missing the mark, their children. Are we not acknowledging illness in people that can harm? So I think she was like sending it in little pieces, trying to process it herself.
Okay. So those two are connected. When one harms another psychologically or physically, we are not to judge but discern.
Yeah.
And a child who is abused is not missing. Thank you for connecting the dots for us, Annie. See, that's why you're incredible. A child who is abused is not missing the mark. They are children. Are we not acknowledging illness in people that can harm? Travis, you want to start on that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just gonna kind of glance at the question here while I attempt to answer it. So, I mean, what I'm gathering for well, one thing that comes up for me in looking at this is just that you know, when we can, there's no shortage of examples that unconsciousness the harm that can come out of that is pretty out of this world. The degree of pain that can ripple out and that can be, you know, carried out over one another. And and so are we not to judge, but discern? I mean, it's you know, to me, it's entire. I mean, what I want for myself is to see things in as clear and true and undistorted a way as I can. That's most useful, so that I can, for me, for understanding and for addressing any situation appropriately. So it's important to acknowledge, to see, it's okay to see and acknowledge the pain that is born of unconsciousness, whether it's within an individual and how it's, you know, inflicted on others in whatever way. I'm not sure I totally understand the question. I mean, my mind wants to go to kind of practical realms of, sometimes when people are in extreme unconsciousness, they almost need to be, you know, they need to be separated from other people intervene to protect people from having pain, whether it's, you know, mental, emotional, physical, inflicted on another, because a lot of horrendous stuff can come out of our unconsciousness. It's important to still be able to see ourselves in people who are in deep unconsciousness, and see that that could just as easily be us in that space. And that the reason that person is so, it's like she's saying a child who is abused is not missing the mark. Well, an unconscious person who's abusing a child, they were a child, they are a child, they're just bigger and older, you know. And so what happened is something happened with them, and they didn't get what they needed. They're hurting and they're acting it out, they're taking it out. So it's important for us to understand that there is nobody here who is not a child. Maybe that's one way to put it. There's nobody here who isn't a child, not a single soul, not a single person who isn't a child. So however you would treat a child is how we should all treat one another. The same compassion, the same understanding, the same patience, the same forgiveness, because we are all children, and some of us just haven't had what we need given to us, and so we can be capable of really hurting others. And so I'm going to leave it off there. I don't really know. I just want to see where it goes from there. So that's what I have to offer to that. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Travis.
Mm-hmm.
Eileen, did you want to say something about that question? Did something come up?
For anyone who's seeing me laughing hysterically on the camera while Travis is talking, I am not laughing at Travis. Travis is talking about treating adults like children. My 43-year-old child is literally acting like a child on the other side of the screen the whole time you're talking. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you hearing what the speaker is saying? Listen to what he's saying.
I didn't know if I was really putting you off or something. You're going, he's just saying everybody can do whatever they want or what. I was going, I don't know. I'm just going to leave it alone and see what happens from here. I couldn't tell. So.
Oh my gosh. Oh, he's driving me crazy tonight. I can't even. Oh my gosh. I do think that Allison, in her question, is almost maybe looking for confirmation, maybe, of what the way I read it anyway, is that she's almost looking for it as like, this is what we should do, right? Like, we shouldn't judge, but discern, because after all, they're people, they're not necessarily conscious. But she did add that little piece about, children being abused. And I guess that, should we not acknowledge the fact that there is illness and people that could harm children? I mean, yeah. So I get her questioning. I don't know that I can add anything into it right now, just because I'm getting lots of practice tonight. Let's put it that way. And it's not with the 8 or 11-year-old.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivy. Kelly, did you want to say something about when one harms another psychologically or physically, we are not to judge but discern?
Sure.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when people harm others, psychologically, physically, mentally, emotionally, generally they're always operating from their own pain and their own memory of that pain that they experienced, and they are wanting to their ego is attached to it, so they are wanting to keep the pain going and keep that narrative going any way they can, usually by taking it out on people outside of themselves. And I agree with Travis. It's often best to, sometimes treat adults as children. Honestly, like when you have kids, as I've experienced, you understand that the development of personality and attachment to things to validate that personality is what a lot of 3D reality is about, until we stop ourselves and begin to understand that there's more. Until we understand that there is more than just our programming, more than just the pain and the suffering, and that there are ways to get beyond it. And yeah, it takes some discernment to understand that that's even possible. Unfortunately, harm against others is very common and very prevalent in human society. And this is one of the main reasons why I choose to have a practice and to take responsibility for myself, so that I am not causing anyone any grief, and being as supportive of others' journeys as much as possible, and not condoning any violence and not condoning any behaviors that harm. My 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And that probably is one way to kind of like generate loving kindness and compassion for the person that is perpetrating the psychological harm, is what Kelly said. Like, the other is just acting out their powerlessness. They are feeling extremely powerless, right? In this Nature of Personal Reality, they show, like in the 1970s, how was upstate New York, Chemung County in upstate New York, and what Seth says is, like, people didn't have jobs. There was the government there in that local county was not doing a very good job, right, of allowing men. And what is our stereotype or limiting belief about men? Men should be breadwinners, and especially in 1960s, late 1960s and 1970s, what is the mental concept, that construct that we have of men? Men are only good enough if they bring a paycheck. And here are people that are racial divide, don't have jobs, not enough companies in that area, right? So what happens? Powerlessness. A lot of powerlessness of that area is created in the psychic energy of the human beings there. And what happens when powerlessness happens? Either some kind of psychological effect, they perpetrate some psychological harm, or nature takes over and they had a huge flood. And that flood is described in this Nature of Personal Reality because the author, Jane Roberts, and her husband go through the flood and a bridge breaks down. But what does the flood do? And that's the whole thing, that we are co-creating our reality, is what Seth gives. And it's like completely described very well, how our own psychic energy creates all the natural disasters as well. So thank you so much, Kelly, for that. Beautiful. April, did you want to talk about what Allison said about children creating?
Yeah, I think that, I agree with what everybody has said already. Our abusers have been abused. They've been abused, and it's normally generational. There's also a huge stigma on mental illness in the world still. It's getting better, but there's a huge stigma on mental illness as far as, you don't go to the doctor, you don't get medicine, you don't do these things. And so are we to not judge? Looking at it from the human perspective, and especially when, you add in the child, that it gets super sensitive when you add in the child. So what I'm going to add to all of what's already been said, because I agree with everything that's been said, what I'm going to add to this is, from the human perspective, you can't understand it. You can't accept it. You can't be okay with it. You just can't. From the human perspective, you can't. And if you can, from the human perspective, then something's not right. And for people to be able to hurt another person, whether you are an adult, whether you are a child, whoever you are, to me, that shows me how far away you are from source, how unaligned you are. Because once you start to become aligned, once you start to become who you really are, and once you start to see and notice, namaste, I see each other. When I can see your soul in my soul, and my soul in your soul, then I can't hurt you. And if you have God in your heart, I don't need to go to church. I don't need to repent. I don't need to Hail Mary. If I have God in my heart, I won't hurt you. So it's more about how far away you are from that alignment, from that true love, from that true source, and the true nature and being of who you really are. That's what it's more about. And when you understand that, that is where you can get we are not to judge. Because now you understand, oh, this person is way off from their alignment. That's the only way you could hurt another. Now, I'll add a little joke in it as I do. I can still step on an ant. I can still step on an ant. I just can. No, but if I was truly aligned, maybe if I was closer like to Travis, I would not step on that ant. I would.
Yeah, I step on ants, but I don't.
Do you?
Well, I don't just go to step on them, but
right.
When I brush my teeth,
Yeah. So to me, it's more about the alignment and the knowing of who you truly are. And when you know that, you won't hurt another person. You won't hurt another animal. You just won't. So
Thank you so much, April. So it goes back to our conversation, doesn't it, April and Kelly, about soul and soul contracts. We are looking at the physical body of a little child, but that soul may be 400 years old. The soul in the child may be 200 years old or 300 years old. And this unconscious, the missing of the mark is that 200-year-old soul is not aligned to their inner being. If the child was perfect, if the child remembered its connection to source, if the child was in pure presence, then the child would never be harmed, because the presence, the immunity, Eckhart says, right? Our immunity is our presence power. Is this alignment with inner beingness? And all of us were never aligned until we learned how to be aligned with our inner beingness. We were never aligned as children. So the missing the mark, the child missing the mark is just missing the mark of alignment, whether it's a child, whether it's a 20-year-old man or woman or whoever, or 40-year-old man or 80-year-old man or woman. It's missing the mark is the align, it's showing your gap, your calibration. You're not calibrated to source.
and
Right.
that's hard to understand as a child because you added the child in it. And I was going to bring up the story of Hitler, but I didn't.
You should.
And then there was an example like a couple years ago, I went up, like the trip I just did, I actually went out of state with no children, which that I haven't done in over 20 years. But a couple of years ago, I did go, I went up to a canoe trip, Asabo River, went up on a canoe trip. And when we were up there, there was a mass shooting. And one of the girls got their phones out and their phone magically worked. And they were all saying, oh my gosh. And they were kind of talking about it. And I was just kind of sitting there, not really saying anything. And then all of a sudden, they all kind of just zoomed in on me and was like, April, because one, they know that I'm a psychic medium. So I have talked to people on the other side and they know, that I'm in this arena. So, and while they were talking, what I did was I kind of put myself in a line. I aligned with source and opened that channel, opened that communication. And my answer to them, I think, was shocking. And I don't mean this. So you have to not look at it from the human perspective. You have to jump over to the soul perspective. And my answer to them was, they all signed up for it. And to some, that seems so cold-hearted. But if you are a child of, and it's not that I want mass shootings, and it's not that I want people to get hurt, but as a child of God, you can't get hurt. You can't get hurt. And you signed up for this agreement. You signed up for this to happen, for the masses to learn, stop shooting people. Stop doing this. I am so frustrated with the gun thing. Like, when are we as humans going to realize we don't need these things? Right? But we can't get there if things like this don't happen. And I'm not asking for things like this to happen. I'm saying these events happen for us to learn to love each other. Just learn, everybody love everybody. These things will stop. So that's
beautiful. We couldn't end. I think we should end at this note. It's getting late for Eileen, and if you start talking about the other questions, we'll just go into another hour of conversation. So that was a beautiful note, April, that you gave us, that all we need to do is just love each other, right? Just like Louise and Gracie do. They're exemplary, right? They're setting an example. Like all of you are month after month, year after year, like all last year, y'all were here. All this year, y'all have been here for the members to have some spiritual experience coming together, different varying experiences. You talk from the soul level. Travis talks more about his deeper sense of deep eye, so beautiful experiences, right? We're missing Caesar and Louise and Brian, so hopefully they will be back next week. It was incredible. Thank you so much for this experience. It was a really great evening. And I'll save the questions that were, I'll save these questions because on Zoom, I can save the chat as a text. And then we'll revisit these questions. Exactly where we stopped, we'll revisit the questions. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Many blessings to everyone out there. Much love. Good night. Thank you.